Welcome to Tech Ties and Human Vibes, where we explore the tech that powers modern businesses and drives innovation. I'm Adam, and with me is Nancy. We'll be talking to entrepreneurs, innovators, and industry experts about the tools they use, the challenges they face, and how technology is shaping the future of work. Let's dive in.
Welcome to a new episode of Tech Ties and Human Vibes. I am your host, Nancy Henriquez, with my co-host, Adam.
Yep,
The first
I'm
man
here.
on earth. Uh,
I'm not
and
that old.
today we are joined by Jason. Hey, Jason, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I am good. Jason, tell our audience a little bit about you and what brought you onto this show.
Oh, yeah, a little bit about me. So I've been in IT and cybersecurity for, oh gosh, man, almost 30 years now. It's crazy. Time flies. But yeah, I spent the better part of that building and running an MSP, and I exited and sold that company a couple of years ago and started a new company. Thank you. Yeah. Triad Infosec. So we specialize in cyber leadership, risk mitigation, compliance strategies, and we partner with MSPs to help them help their clients, kind of navigate the world of compliance, and really with the end goal of making the clients, not only compliant, but also more secure and more resilient. So
You said something there that immediately sparked my eyes there. Okay, you said cyber leadership.
yes.
What does that mean?
I mean, that really means having a seat at the table, with other senior leaders within the organization, kind of filling that fractional or virtual chief information security officers, or VCSO, as it's kind of known in the industry. It just really managing cyber risk at the organizational level. So, looking at not only IT, but what is HR doing? What is, legal counsel doing? What are the other executives doing? What is the finance department doing? Because all of these departments, if you will, throughout the organization, do have a role in cyber risk mitigation and strategy. So everyone needs to be on the same page. So we help make sure that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing at all times.
How do you get into this industry? I mean, you're like the Marines, right? You're there before everybody else is, and you're trying to take care of business to make sure everything's done. How do
Yeah.
you just wake up one morning and be like, this is what I think I want to do?
Man, that's a really good. I don't know how I ended up here. No, it was. No, I think in kind of the latter years of running my MSP was when cyber compliance and due diligence was really starting to become a thing, and we were getting requests from our clients uh, to help them fill out these massive spreadsheets and answer all these questions that their clients were asking them. And for some odd reason, I like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird. So,
Oh, bless people like you because whew, I
yeah,
started getting a little PTSD hearing the forms. Like, oh, when those came to my
yeah,
desk, I was like dreading it. It was something that I was
oh
like,
yeah,
oh my God, I'm going to poke my eyes out and I don't know what, but like just horrible, horrible.
yeah.
Not my thing.
Man, call me weird, I guess. So, and this was around 2019. I decided I would dive deeper, into that world. So I actually went back to school, did my master's in cyber, so it was all focused on kind of that managerial, executive, policy, procedure, compliance world. And then started working through certifications, CISM, CISSP, things like that to really kind of solidify the knowledge right in that world, and that's really what led me here. Is after selling the MSP and deciding what I wanted to do when I grew up. Now that I don't have a company anymore, yeah, I decided to do Triad, but I wanted the sole focus for this new company to be only in that world. Doing what I call the paperwork side of cyber. And helping MSPs and their clients and other organizations, just kind of navigate it and, make sure that, yes, there are parts of cyber that aren't that cool, when it comes to doing paperwork. And it allows the MSP to really continue focusing where they're super strong. And that's all the technical controls, MDR, SIM, SOC, firewalls, encryption, all of that stuff. So I just kind of help bring it all together.
So when you see a stack of papers, like contracts and stuff, that really gets you going, like you're excited about that?
It gets me going about as fast as I can go these days. But yeah, I mean, doing contracts and reading through, picking out the cyber components of contracts that organizations are signing with their clients to understand cyber insurance requirements, breach notification windows, and just making sure that if something happens, you not only find yourself in an incident mess, but you may end up in a breach of contract mess in addition to that, and it could get real messy.
So your goal is to get them before something bad happens.
Oh yeah,
right?
no, everything we do is with the goal of being proactive. We want to go in, kind of start with that organizational risk assessment, if you will, looking at all the departments that I mentioned earlier, and then identifying the gaps, building roadmaps, and just really lowering that likelihood and impact, for the risk register people out there. So if something does happen, and it probably will, because nothing's bulletproof. I mean, let's be honest with everyone. So when something does happen, let's say a ransomware event, that the impact on the organization is as small as possible. Hopefully maybe contained within the one endpoint that was ground zero, and it doesn't have the ability to pivot or do privilege escalation and spread, because we've been proactive and put the right tools in place and educated the staff and all the things that we need to do.
And when you said educated the staff, can you give me some examples of?
Yeah, I mean, security awareness training is huge, and when I say training, I'm not talking about doing the 10-minute free video once a year. I don't, in my mind, that's not adequate. Will it check a box? Yes, but real training needs to happen, in my mind, at minimum quarterly. So when we actually develop security awareness training programs for organizations, I typically like to do like phishing simulations monthly.
Oh, wow.
And then quarterly, training videos on different aspects of security, from digital, physical, insider threats, all the things. And then,
so you send emails out just to see if people will click on them.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's still the biggest.
You're such a jerk.
Oh yeah. People don't see me coming. No, it really is. It's still the number one avenue that the bad actors take are phishing emails. They're getting more sophisticated with the use of AI, but then AI is also helping the bad actors use other methods of social engineering to get at people and manipulate them. Like, voice cloning is huge right now. Deepfake videos are huge. All the things on social media. So it's really tough, just to communicate in general in the world today without, making sure that the person on the other end of the telephone, the text message, the DM, all the things is actually legitimate.
Now, have you gotten into, I know that you'll send an email out, but do you do the AI phone calls as well, just to see?
Yeah. We have the ability to do social engineering pen testing. That's what I call it. But yeah, fake phone calls, fake text messages, really testing
like
the
so
human
much fun.
beings. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that
do
was
not want any
really
prank calls, Adam.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to talk afterwards, Jason, just so we can.
Yeah, we
I can just see all
if
the
you
ways
think
that Adam
about
will
it,
use this to mess with me.
yeah. I mean, that's how the big breach with the MGM Grand. I think last year or so, it was all voice cloning, and they actually manipulated the help desk, so they fooled IT people. So it's a big deal to be aware and trained, and how to trust yet verify human beings over the telephone. So it's very interesting stuff.
How many calls do you get that it's too late and something happened to them and they're looking for you to just come and help them bail them out?
More than I would like. I've been on the other end of that phone call 4 or 5 times, I would say, probably in the last 2 or 3 months.
Oh, wow.
One of them was unfortunate that there was no proactive measures taken in this business by, leadership, MSP, whatever their situation was. I was called in at the 11th hour, really when it was unfortunately too late for them, because what we found out is they didn't have the security tools in place. They didn't have immutable backups. So the bad actors were able to wipe the backups on their way out. They didn't have cyber insurance. So there was no way to kind of help offload some of the financial impact. So we were kind of down to working with the bad actors, negotiating the ransom, and you're always just, it's a hope and a prayer at that point. But with no insurance, the owner would have had to been out of pocket, for all of these costs. And it's not only the cost of the ransom, but it's cost to rebuild everything. And she didn't have that kind of free cash flow of that magnitude. So she ended up having to close her business. So it was tough. That was probably one of the tougher ones. The majority of the calls I get are, hey, something happened. It was a business email compromise, or maybe a minor ransomware outbreak that was able to be contained pretty well. And they're looking for kind of that clean bill of health, scan, to go in and make sure that nothing is left lingering around, or back doors or things like that.
So the lady that had to close her shop up, just because I'm ignorant in this world and know nothing about it. I mean, so she didn't. So the way, if I understand correctly, right, the hackers come in and then hold your data ransom. Is that right? And so they require how much ever money it is, or whatever they're requiring. And if you don't have the money, then what do they do? What do they do?
If you don't, so a lot of people, if you don't have the money, you hope to have the backups. Unfortunately, she didn't have any of these things, or it wasn't done properly, to be able to set her up for success if something were to happen. So bad actors, yes, they were able to force their way into the network. They were able to get to the servers. They were able to encrypt all the data and hold it for ransom, because at that point it's unusable, right? Because it's encrypted. And the bad actors hold the decryption key, and that's what they want you to pay for. In some cases, people pay and they don't get the decryption key, because you have to remember we're talking about criminals here. So, but some are actually pretty good to work with, as crazy as that sounds. And if you pay them what they're asking for, or whatever you can negotiate, they will turn over the correct key, and it will unlock everything, and you're essentially back in business. But those are rarities.
I think that's something that you said. They're criminals, but what I think something to remember about them being criminals is that they're not just criminals. They are, oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought there. They are enterprising criminals, right? So the purpose of what they are doing is intentionally trying to get as much money as they can, and that being whether it is from the data itself or from the actual money that they can get from a business owner, right? Like that's part of.
I know they're big. It's big business, in the pockets of the world. I mean, they're organizations. They go to work. It's just their work is cybercrime. And I think I saw a stat that said by 2030, cybercrime will be close to a $9 trillion industry. So, I mean, they stand up, their cubicle, they go to work. Cubicles, talk at the water cooler, do all the things. And then they sit down in front of their workstation, and their job is to, hack or manipulate or spam or do whatever they need to do. Because at the end of the day, extortion is the name of the game.
That part too is that they don't realize the impact. Sorry.
No, you're good. Go.
They don't realize the impact that it has on the other side, right? That small business owner that you just talked about, how that impacts her entire family and her employees and everyone else that was involved with her business. Like that's incredibly sad to realize the impact.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think staff's families. They probably depend on the income from that job, and now they don't have it. Now they have to go look for another job. So yeah, the trickle down effect is crazy. So it's just that's why we're here. That's why we're here to really try to help, educate those business owners, senior leaders that, hey,
Yeah.
don't just punt cyber over to your IT people and think that that's all you need to do. There's a lot more involved.
Even if they have the data and you pay them and they release it, that doesn't mean they didn't make copies, right?
Oh yeah, no, some of the worst groups out there will definitely steal a copy before they encrypt it. And it's their leverage to get paid, because what these bad actors found was in the early days, data exfiltration wasn't really happening that often. They would just encrypt the data and say, hey, pay us or else. And people are like, screw you, we'll just restore the data because they had good backups. But so the bad actors are like, okay, watch this. I'll steal a copy, encrypt it. Yes, you could recover from a backup and be back in business, but if you don't pay us, we're just going to leak everything that we stole out on the dark web.
Mm.
And some of it's been pretty rough, especially, industries that have a lot of very sensitive information, like, law firms, healthcare, finance. That's some very sensitive information that if that stuff gets stolen and leaked out and it affects, people downstream, here come the lawsuits and, identity theft protection. And there's a lot of cost behind that.
What is your niche? I'm just curious there. Do you have a particular industry that you hang out with and do most of your business with?
No, not really. We haven't, niched down into a single industry. We try to help as many companies as we can. Most of them are in a regulated space, like healthcare, finance, and we do a lot of defense contracting. With CNMC compliance. But we really want to help whoever we can. There's a lot of resilience built services that we have that we run through MSP partners, for those non-regulated industries, those mom and pop, like, the business that went out of business. They weren't in a regulated space, but if they would have kind of acted like they were, for lack of a better term, kind of, align your posture, with a best practice framework and do some of the things that may be required of a regulated industry, can go a long way with building that resilience. And that's our goal, is to let's do incident response tabletop exercises. Let's do risk assessments. Let's do insurance reviews. Let's do all of these things that a lot of companies have to do to be compliant, but anyone that operates at all should be doing these things to make sure that they have everything in place that's necessary to prevent or at least bounce back, for something like this happening.
Oof, man, that is a lot. That is a lot. So I'm curious, being a previous MSP owner myself, um, I have gotten the question a lot of, will you start another MSP?
Yeah.
My answer is, that time for me has passed. My purpose is now to serve other MSPs and help them grow. So, and I got to that point in a pretty curious way, discovering that. What was that journey like for you when you got to the point where you realized maybe being an MSP was no longer your purpose, but now you wanted to serve in a different way?
Yeah, I think it was an interesting journey, for sure. And I think, like a lot of people who exit the space, not saying I was over it. I loved what I did. I mean, I grew up in the infrastructure world doing, computer support, repair, all the way up to global, infrastructure, data centers, and I love that stuff. But I started to like the business more, like the business aspect, and then kind of getting into the cyber and tying that policy, procedure, compliance to business objectives. I really, found myself liking that a lot. So, when an offer came in, to sell the MSP, it was just the timing behind it. Everything just kind of made sense, right? I took a step back and looked at, what's best for me, what's best for the buyer, what's best for the staff that I had, what's best for our clients, and taking all that into consideration. We were able to put something together that did make sense for everyone involved. It was, a win across the board. So I signed it and I exited. And, definitely I've been asked, are you going to do it again? And the answer is absolutely no. 100% no. I will not go back. I don't want to be behind the keyboard. I love it. I do. I miss it at times, but it's just not for me anymore. And I do, want to help. And we are helping, MSPs all over the country, grow and scale, but by using the cyber compliance and resilience services, we're able to, help them kind of bolt this on to their tech stack to have a more comprehensive cyber offering. And we're unlocking, a lot of value, a lot of additional MRR, just making that client stickier for the MSP, increasing the lifetime value, clients happier because now maybe they're compliant or they're maybe saving money. In some cases, they're making their customers happy. So there's a lot of winning going on, and I'm really enjoying it.
Everyone can sleep a little better at night.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask a question then. How do you how do you even get started in the MSP world? Like you graduated high school and you were like, you know what? I think this is what I
Yeah.
want to do.
So yeah, that's a really good story. So after getting out of the military, I in the military, I did as much computer stuff as we had. I mean, it was the late '90s, so there wasn't a lot, right?
Okay.
But when I got out and started, working my way into IT jobs, starting at really a mom and pop computer repair shop where people would back then would still unhook the tower and bring their computer into a repair shop, right? And you would take it in the back and connect it. And, when it made sense to replace hard drives and reload OSs and video cards and, all that stuff was cheaper than buying a new system. Those days obviously are long gone. But, just working various jobs. And I ended up working one that was, a consulting type capacity. It was more still a break fix model. That was really all that existed, back then. But going out and working with different organizations, different people, different issues. I just like the variety in it. I was like, this is pretty cool. And I thought I was pretty good at it. So I was like, why don't I just do this on my own? And so when I moved here to Houston in 2006, I started kind of doing computer repair, support stuff, just break fix work on the side. And it started catching traction, moved into a recurring revenue model, and just started growing. And, we did pretty well.
So when you first started, only because I've asked Nancy all of these same questions, and I just love to hear how you first started. Like you just decided one day, hey, I think I'm going to do this. It's 2006, you said, or
2006.
2006. You're new to Houston at this point,
Oh yeah.
and you're just like, I'm going to start a business.
Yep.
What does that? I mean,
I was
what
great.
does
Yeah.
that?
It was interesting because when I moved here, I had no friends, no family, no contacts. I just landed here for a job. That job, didn't work out very well. But anyway, so I was fortunate enough for a good friend of mine who I served with. He was from the Houston area, and his dad was, very well known insurance agent, in the Houston area, and they were all down in the Corpus Christi area at this point. But my friend's dad introduced me to one of his colleagues in the insurance space, very successful. So he gave me about an hour of his time to kind of mentor in a way. And it's like, look, if you want to do your own business, these are some of the things you got to get out in the community. You need to network. I was like, what is network? The only networking I know is hooking computers together, So, but you start talking to the Chamber of Commerce and all these things. So I started doing research and found, local chamber, local BNI, those type, and just get out, start meeting people and, doing stuff cheap, like, hey, if you need a printer connected at your house, I'm your guy. I'll do it, very. So, and it just built from there. And then just, you start picking up a little bit of, business related work outside of the residential. And then, those businesses get a little bit larger and you meet more people, and, you just really focus on the relationship and doing the best job possible and get referrals and build, that reputation. And then, we just, eventually just obviously left the residential space, and, the businesses got bigger. We started building cloud infrastructure and data centers, and we just went from there. So it was interesting. Yeah. From just making that decision thinking, yeah, I can do this myself, to 16 years later, building something that was, someone wanted to buy. So it was,
looking back on
it
it,
really fun ride.
looking back on it, do you, I mean, clearly knowing what you know today, you would do the same thing. But your advice to, a 25-year-old, do you have any advice to them? Hey, take the risk, or
It's starting an MSP. Man, to start one in today's world, it's come way different than, starting it back in 2006. Just the risk, the tools, the investment, to play in this game, starting out in now. I'm not saying don't do it, but just be prepared.
Yeah.
And because it is very competitive space. Nancy and I, we, for lack of a better term, we were neighbors and competitors. We didn't really know each other, but I mean, there was, and she can probably attest to how many MSPs are in Houston or in every other area. So you be ready to compete, and just the ups and downs, the risk, of running MSP is a lot different in today's world because of all the compliance stuff and the way MSPs are viewed in those environments. So they're under a microscope in a lot of ways. So be prepared for that as well.
Well, I got another question, Nancy, and then it's your turn.
Okay.
Fast forward, 16 years, how many ever years it's been, and you're today, right? If I'm an MSP and I'm looking for somebody that does what you do to help my clients, how would I find you?
I mean, you find us website. I mean, really LinkedIn. We have a huge presence, on LinkedIn. So, LinkedIn handle is just my full name, Jason Rorie. There, triadinfosec.io is our website. You can find, all the services that we do, more information on, our MSP partnership, and, a lot of the compliance and risk, type services that we offer.
Now I can ask my question, Adam.
Go ahead, Nancy. It's all yours.
Well, thank you. So the last question I have for you is, we've been talking a lot about the future of work and what that looks like with agentic AI coming in, AI in general, in all sorts of areas of business. How do you see the MSP landscape changing, or where do you see it going in the next 5 years,
A
especially
great
with
question.
cybersecurity?
Yeah. So, I always have security, risk management, compliance in mind, when it comes to AI. So I recently, went through and passed the AI governance professional certification. So a lot of great information and education going through that process. And we have built a risk management and governance solution that we help MSPs provide out to their clients around, AI acceptable use, how to manage vendor risk, because there's tons of AI vendors that are popping up overnight, with, all these claims about how great they can make your business and how you can grow and scale, 1,000 times faster. And a lot of that's true. It's just, you got to do it in a very safe way. Ask questions, just do proper due diligence. Now, when it comes to the MSPs themselves, I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, I see a lot on social media right now of people prepping MSPs to blend in more AI consulting services as part of, their solution stack, which I think is going to be key. Is to be that person who knows AI, so you don't get replaced by someone who does if you don't know the space. So I think that'll be critical for MSPs is to understand, how to educate and deliver and manage that risk for their clients. But them internally, you gotta you're going to probably have to make some adjustments. I mean, there's already AI solutions out there that are tapping into PSA systems, doing kind of level one triage. So kind of that help desk entry tier one level support is starting to fade. I don't know if it ever will completely fade out, but it's something to be aware of, and that's happening in a lot of industries. A lot of the junior level starting positions are being replaced with AI. It's happening more in software development for sure, because AI is really good at writing base level code. So as an MSP, just beware. It's here. It's not going anywhere. It's just going to get smarter. It's going to replace a lot more things. So get with the times and make sure that that's part of your offering.
Love it.
I love it.
Solid
I love
advice.
it. Nancy, do you have any other questions?
Do you ask that because I normally do? I usually have a surprise question up my sleeve or something. But today, really, I don't. I think that we covered it. Jason, you did such a great job at telling us
Appreciate it.
like everything about cybersecurity and all of that. So that's yeah. I guess my last question is, do you still enjoy Houston? I've since left.
Yeah,
We're not
I
neighbors
do.
anymore.
I do. It's good to get out of Houston occasionally. I do enjoy it. I will. I may make my exit from Houston at some point, but I don't see that happening probably for the next 4 or 5 years. At least, kids need to get out of high school first and kind of see what their next move is after they graduate, and that might dictate a change there. Who knows? But I do enjoy it. I mean, there's obviously a lot to do, but it's also very busy, fast paced. So again, it's good to get away. So, Houston is what it is.
Hot and humid.
Nancy's going to move back there pretty soon.
I don't know about that, Adam.
Anyway, Jason, thank you very much for your time
Oh,
today.
you're
We
very
do
welcome. It's been
greatly
a pleasure.
appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that's all I have. That's all I think Nancy has. So, yeah, once again, thanks for joining us, and we'll hope to talk to you again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.